In this tutorial, I will be covering how you can use Arcane to control grandMA3 over OSC. Now, if this is your first Arcane tutorial, I highly recommend watching our overview first, and there will be a link at the top of your screen to go there right now. Now, this video is for people who already have show files in grandMA3 that they want to be able to control from Arcane, and eventually, potentially even use Arcane to speed up the process for timecoding programming. So we'll be starting with this show file that you can see on the screen right now. And here we have a number of playbacks, in particular, a few different faders and executors that we will want to be able to control from Arcane. So here you can see we've got a fader here, fader here, fader here, and then we've got an executor for the top position and an executor for the position of the lights at the bottom, and then an executor that goes through a few different color sequences. So we're going to be controlling all of these things from Arcane. So the next thing we need to do now that we have this show file ready to be controlled is to go into our grandMA settings here, go into in and out, go to OSC on the side, and then we need to create a row here if one doesn't already exist. And this is going to be the input that we receive from Arcane. So I'm going to right click on the name here, call it Arcane. We need to go along here. Port, we're going to need to refer to that port later, but we'll leave it as default as 8000. Prefix, we can leave empty. We can leave all of these values at their default. Fader range 100, we'll also need to refer to that later as well. Receive, we want to set to yes. So press Y to do that. Receive command, press Y to set that to yes. Echo input and output, you can do that if you want to, but we're not going to be referring to the command line for this video. Once you've set all those values, what you then need to do is make sure that enable input at the top here is on, and then make sure that the correct interface is connected. So we're going to be controlling Arcane from the same computer that's running on PC, but there's nothing that's stopping you from having Arcane running on one computer and then controlling potentially a full console or another computer running on PC. So if that's the case, you want to make sure that the interface here is one that can actually is on the same network as the other device that's going to be sending that information. So now that's set up, we can exit out of that. And I'm going to switch to another window now that has Arcane and our 3D view open. So now on PC is ready to receive our OSC command. So we need to go to the settings in Arcane, go to OSC here, click on add sender. I'm going to call this and grandMA3. Go into the connection. Host is localhost, which is correct because we're running on the same PC. The port was 8000, which is from the configuration on grandMA, and then we can close that. So the first thing I want to do is start setting up some controls for the fader. So if we look at the bottom here, top dimmer is 201. So let's set that first. So we click on add binding. We'll call this top dimmer. And then the path you need to do exactly is /F and then fader and then the number. So in this case, it's going to be 201. The type needs to be an integer. The minimum value, I typically set 1 and then maximum 100. So this maximum value here corresponds to, if we go back to the settings in and out here, so port is 8000 and then fader range here is 100. So this value should probably match the same as your maximum value that you're sending from Arcane. This could be another value, it could be 255 for example, but then you want these values to correspond to the range of values that you want to set in grandMA. Now one thing I find when you're sending values to control the fader is that if you send 0, that will actually disable the sequence entirely. And that's probably not what you want most of the time. So I tend to set a minimum value of 1 and then a maximum value of 100. Now that we've got that, what we can do is go to our test binding page here and then adjust the value here, and we can see that this is correctly adjusting the value of the fader for 201. So I'll go ahead and do the same for the other two faders that we want to control. So the next one is sides, dimmer, path is fader 202. This is an integer, minimum value 1, maximum value 100. We'll test that. That's working good. So I'll clear the override there, clear the override there. And then add another binding. This next one I'm going to make it the floor. So I'll do floor, dimmer, floor. This is fader 203, integer 1, 100. And I'll test this as well. And we can see that we're now successfully controlling all three faders can now be controlled from Arcane. So I'm actually going to go ahead and set these to their maximum values now so that we can test the positions and colors as we add them. So the next thing that we're going to do is set up the executors for 204 through 206, which will allow us to control the position and colors from Arcane as well. The way that we're going to do this is by sending OSC messages that simply have grandMA commands that are run directly on the console. You can use this to run any command that you'd like, but I find this is a good use case for it. So what we're going to do is call this one top position, go. Actually, we'll just call it top position, and we'll be running the go command for that. So then these get reordered as you give labels to the rows. So for this, the path needs to be / and then lowercase cmd. And for these messages to be received successfully, you need to make sure that if you go to settings, in and out, that's what receive command here is used for. So receive command needs to be yes for grandMA to actually respond to these messages. Now the type of top position here is not a value that gets sent from a shape or an envelope. It is something that gets triggered on and off. So we're going to call this one, we're going to say trigger / macro, and then click on the settings button here. The message type is going to be string. And then in the string, we just put in the command that we want to run. So the command to select an executor and run it, in this particular case 204, is going to be ex204 semicolon to have a second command afterwards, and then go plus. Now I recommend leaving the on and off thresholds to their default value, but effectively what they do is configure at what point this output will respond to a specific envelope in a spell that's detected. So for example, if you have a drum beat that goes up and then down, it will be triggered as soon as that drum beat goes past the 10% threshold, and then it will be considered off as soon as it hits 0. I typically recommend leaving them as their defaults because they tend to work quite well, but you can adjust these if you need to. So I'm going to leave that as they are for now. And now if I scroll to the right, I should be able to test it. So I'll click on test binding and then click on press and hold. So I click press and hold, it's run 204, press it again, next position, press it again, next position. So that seems to be working fine. It's successfully sending 2 commands in a single message to select an executor and run it. So I'll go ahead and do that for the other 2 executors. So this one is called other position. This one also needs to be CMD. This also needs to be trigger macro. This should be a string. And this is executor 205. Let's say go. And then if we go to settings, we can see that pressing this successfully triggers the sequence there. Final thing is going to be the color. So I'm going to call this color/cmd. Give it a type of trigger. The message type is string. And the command is x206. Go. Then scroll to the right here. Test binding. There you go. Every time I press it, it then advances the color. Great. So we've now configured OSC here to be able to control grandMA. I'm going to make sure that I've cleared all these other test bindings here so that we're sort of ready to actually do performance. The one final thing we need to do here is assign each of these bindings to a particular group that we want to control together in Arcane. So sometimes you might have multiple executors or multiple faders that you want to control from Arcane together, so they can be given the same output group here. But for this case, we're going to have one output group per binding just to make things simple. So I'm going to go back to output groups here, make sure that we have defined all of them. So I'm going to rename the first one here to top dim, rename this one to sides dim, rename this one to bottom dim. Then we need 3 more output groups. This one is going to be top position. This one's going to be other position. And then this one's going to be color. So now we go back to OSC, make sure that we assign all of them correctly. So I'm just going to make this a bit bigger to make it a bit easier. So color needs to be assigned to color. Floor dimmer assigned to bottom dimmer. I should rename that. Other position, sides dimmer, top dimmer, top position, top position. I'm just going to rename that output group here to floor. Cool. So now that we've set up all our output groups, we've connected all of our OSC bindings to those output groups, we are ready to actually play around with this. So we can go to our output map here, and I'm going to make this a little bigger here just so that we can see everything. So here we have the range of values that we want Arcane to control within the range that we've already set in OSC. So for example, you might have one fader that you want to control between 50 and 100 and another fader that you want to control between 0 and 100, but you want them to be controlled together from a single output group. But sometimes you don't want the output group to be using the full range of values. So you're also able to further limit the minimum and maximum values here. So we can now go and test. If we lock this to the maximum value here, we can see that these all turn up the brightness. We can adjust what we want the maximum value to be. So maybe we want to turn the maximum value of the sides be a bit lower here. Actually, I'll leave them open as well. And then you can trigger the top position here, trigger the other position here, and trigger the color here. So now let's load a track and actually link it all together. So I'm going to go to the load track page, and you could use another audio source. You might already have Arcane connected to Pioneer DJ equipment, in which case everything should work as normal there. But we're going to be loading an audio file directly into Arcane here. So I'm going to click on Open Master Audio File. I'm going to load Silverline, which is a song that has a spell already embedded in Arcane, so you can play around with it straight away. Click on Load. I'm going to go to Output Map. So now I'll hit play. Down a bit. So maybe what I want to do is link these metronomes to the sides here. So you can see they're now flashing. And maybe I want the cymbals to flash the top and the bottom there. Maybe I want the bass drum to also flash the top there. And there we go. and we'll have the bass also. So this could be one way of using it. So maybe I'll increase the minimum values just so that we have some color on all the lights. And then, so here we just had a cue go past, and what I want to do actually is connect that cue to a trigger. So I'm just going to go back a little bit, connect this cue to the top position and the color. So you can see immediately Arcane sent the trigger when we hit those points. We could also, for example, add the color to this drum element here. And so the world here is really your oyster. Maybe you want the bass drum to also trigger the color. So I'll pause that there. So that's all it takes to connect Arcane to grandMA. You can control any faders, anything that can be controlled by a command. All of those messages can be sent from Arcane and triggered from different elements of the song. So when you have performers going in and loading new tracks into their decks or whatever's playing the music, you'll get all of this information as long as there's a spell file, and then you'll be able to link those different elements together. When it comes to fully time-coded shows, this will really allow you to speed up the process of timecoding, and in our next video, I will go through how you can do that. So at the time of recording this video, Arcane is still in private beta. If you're interested in trying it out, please feel free to go to arcanewizards.com and sign up to our waitlist. Also, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.